Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And my name is Tanya Ash. I'm a Director of Programs and Member Engagement here at World Trade Center Denver. This webinar is part of our Tariff Navigation series delivered in partnership with Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade through the State Economic Resilience Technical Assistance Program. We know how challenging it is to manage cost and risk when trade rules keep changing. The goal of this series is to give you practical strategies around sourcing, classification, and compliance so you can better plan and respond. For over 40 years, World Trade Center Denver has supported companies navigating imports, exports, and global operations. And over the past year, we've worked closely with hundreds of businesses specifically on trade-related solutions. In addition to these webinars, we're also offering a direct support through it that qualifying companies can access up to $1,000 matching reimbursement grant to help offset consulting costs. So if you're interested, you can fill out the request form. It should be in the chat, or we'll post it in the chat to schedule an initial discovery call. Before we get started, let's see. Andrew, I do still see me. Sorry, it's like, oh, my screen is changing. Well, I hope that you still can see me.
Yes, I can still see you.
Okay, fantastic. Now I'd love to introduce our speaker for today, Kelsey Moraski, Head of Global Warehousing and Logistics at Norgren. Kelsey brings deep experience in supply chain, logistics, and compliance, and holds an MBA along with her U.S. Customs Broker license, CSS and CES. Kelsey, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Tanya. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. All right, I'm going to share a presentation. Bear with me. All right, can you see that in presentation mode?
We can see it.
Okay, without the notes, like the full screen?
Correct, yeah, it looks good.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so today we're going to cover USMCA. We'll go through the basics of what it is and why it's so important right now. And it's largely tied to the current tariff landscape, right? We've had a lot of changes in the US. I'm sure everyone on this call has been impacted by them. And USMCA has been a really great way for many companies to mitigate some of those costs that they're facing. We'll go through the basics of how qualification works. We've tried to tailor this presentation to a large audience. So there may be some things that are really basic and there may be some things that are more advanced. It's a lot of information in one session. If you have questions, please follow up. That's what the World Trade Center is here for, and we can get you the right level of detail that you need. We'll go through a couple examples of that qualification process, and then we'll talk through what's needed from a compliance standpoint in terms of certificates, record keeping, as well as some pitfalls that companies might face. All right, so starting with the fundamentals, USMCA is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. You might also hear it referred to as CUSMA in Canada or TMEC in Mexico. It's the same agreement, it's just different names depending on the country. So this is our trilateral trade agreement between the US, Canada, and Mexico, and it went into effect on July 1st of 2020. This replaced NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement that went into effect in 1994. The key thing to understand is that USMCA kept the duty-free treatment for qualifying goods that existed under NAFTA, but added additional requirements in areas like automotive content, labor standards, intellectual property, and digital trade. So why should your company care about USMCA? First, and the most obvious reason is there are direct duty savings. So for qualifying goods, you eliminate the standard most favored nation duty, which is typically in the range of 2 to 10%, depending on the product that you're importing. A huge lesson learned from 2025. In early 2025, IEEPA tariffs were announced that were 25% on goods of Canada and Mexico. And at that time, USMCA qualifying goods were exempt. So in 2025, that created a massive cost advantage for companies who had USMCA compliance in place. Obviously, IEEPA is not valid anymore, but even so, at the time, if companies had that and were able to avoid outlaying that money to begin with, it was a huge working capital benefit. It was a huge cost savings for those organizations. So the lesson there is that trade policy can change overnight, and companies that already have these programs set up are in a better position to navigate those changes when it matters. All right, let's see here. So beyond that savings, USMCA gives you a competitive edge over any importers who don't qualify. It's stronger leverage in those customer pricing conversations and readiness to capitalize when the next shift happens. Something worth noting is that there is a joint review occurring in July 2026 that will determine the future of the agreement. So depending on what comes out of that, there may be changes, but they will not be fast changes. There's a sunset clause. We are locked in to some level of agreement for quite some time. All right, so let's walk through some of the major tariff types and what USMCA helps. USMCA can eliminate that most favored nation duty, which again is typically 2 to 10%. And that's the core ongoing benefit of this agreement. It can, for the time being, help eliminate Section 122 surcharges that are at 10%. There is an exemption in place until July. It also, when they were valid, helps eliminate IEEPA tariffs, which were 25%. And that was a huge benefit, as I mentioned, for many companies. IEEPA tariffs, again, are not constitutional anymore, but USMCA exempted goods while those were active. There is a partial USMCA benefit in the area of automotive for Section 232. I won't go into the details of that. And then there is not a benefit on anything around metals 232. So the steel, aluminum, copper tariffs or the lumber tariffs, those apply to all countries without those exemptions.
In the meantime, while we're waiting for Kelsey to come back, I also wanted to remind everybody that we do keep these recordings on our YouTube channel. And this series, there are 6 of them. So if you missed any of them, you can just go to our website, to our YouTube channel, World Trade Center Denver, and check out the YouTube videos. Oh, there we have. Kelsey is back. Welcome back, Kelsey.
I don't know what happened. How long have I been gone?
Maybe like 5 minutes, I would say.
5 minutes? Okay. Do you remember by chance what slide I was on when it dropped?
Yeah,
I was over here talking to myself.
Okay.
Let's see. Were we in the basics section?
Yeah, if you share the screen, we don't see the screen now. So if you share the screen, I'll let you know which one.
Okay. Rather than talking through this slide again, because I don't know where I left off, I'll move on to this one. This is a chart that gives you the complete picture of what USMCA does and does not cover. So again, it's a good cheat sheet to show you where you can avoid tariffs. Again, the core benefit is that's always available is on those most favored nation based duty rates. Okay. A hypothetical case study, mid-size industrial components manufacturer that makes steel fasteners, brackets, fittings. They manufacture in Mexico using North American steel. This company imports 50 million annually from Mexico to the US. They have an average duty rate of 5%. And after reviewing their bills of material, they determined that 70% of their SKUs qualified under tariff shift rules. So in today's environment, under those most favored nation duty rate of 5%, they would be saving 1.75 million a year. In 2025, when IEEPA was active, the same company would have been saving 8.75 million a year. So again, this illustrates the importance of having your documentation together and being able to claim USMCA. Now that we've covered why it matters, we'll get into the mechanics of how it works. To claim USMCA, you need a costed bill of materials, as well as product classification, which means HS codes for every component within your bill of materials, as well as the finished good. And it sounds simple, saying you just need these two things to qualify goods, but it's really important that you get it right, because the whole basis of qualification is based off this information. The biggest risk in this is with regards to HS codes. A lot of companies unknowingly rely on their suppliers or their brokers to provide their classification. That's not reasonable care. So under reasonable care, companies are expected and accountable for reviewing their classifications of their products and making sure it's accurate. And again, it's really important that you get it accurate, because when we get into how to qualify, qualification depends on those HTS codes and what they are moving to and from. So once you have that information in place, you have a couple options. You can either say, I want to work with a third party and hand it off to them to help you with qualifications. Again, under reasonable care, you still need to make sure that you agree with those qualifications and how they've reviewed your products. Or you can self-qualify. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in this presentation talking about how to self-qualify. But I also wanted to just throw out there for third-party qualification, there are lots of options available. What I'm showing in this video is just a video for one of World Trade Center's partners, Kendrick Trade, who is a Colorado-based company that offers the ability to upload your costed bills of material into their tool. It will do the qualification analysis for you and apply the rules of origin, etc. And it will give you back a detailed qualification review of what qualifies, why it qualifies, etc. It will then let you generate a USMCA certificate and fill out all the different certificate data that you would need to be able to provide to your broker. So I'm not going to say anything more on third parties beyond this. Kendrick is not the only third party available, but it is one that World Trade Center works with and can help you with. Self-qualification. This is the meat of this discussion. When you qualify a good, the product is originating if it meets one of three conditions. It can be wholly obtained or produced. That means like a mineral that's been mined, a crop that's been grown, or an animal that's been raised in the US, Canada, or Mexico. Second, the product can be produced entirely from materials that are themselves originating materials in the US, Canada, and Mexico. So if every input into your finished good already qualifies, then your finished good also qualifies. And then third, and this is where most manufactured products fall, is that the products must meet product-specific rules of origin. So these rules are laid out in Annex 4B, and they can require a tariff shift, a minimum regional value content, or both. So if you're coming from a NAFTA background, you'll recognize all these concepts, right? The core concepts didn't change in the framework, but some of the rules did. So we're going to dig into how those rules work. So each product that you import has its own rule of origin based on its HS code. Again, that's laid out in Annex 4B of the USMCA agreement. That's where you would find the rule of origin that you need to apply to your goods. So there are a couple ways goods can qualify, and those rules have different types. So the first is tariff shift, and that requires that your non-originating inputs change their tariff classification during manufacturing. The second is regional value content, which we refer to as RVC, and that requires a minimum percentage of the product's value to come from North America. And then third, it could be a combination of both, and that's really common in the rules of origin. So I will get into some examples of how to qualify, but I want to go through some key concepts first, starting with the anatomy of an HS code, because understanding this structure is foundational to being able to determine tariff shift. So in this example, you can see the first two digits, 73. Those tell you the chapter. The first four are the heading, 6 subheading, and so on and so forth. In the US, we use 10-digit classification codes, but every country in the world uses up to the 6-digit classification. The last 4 digits are country specific. So you don't need to memorize codes for any of your products in order to be able to qualify your goods for USMCA. You just have to understand the general breakdown of how they work. So tariff shift. This is the most common rule of origin, and the concept is that non-originating inputs undergo a change in tariff classification during manufacturing. If those inputs change the classification, then the product qualifies. So the example I put on the screen at a very simplistic level is if the finished good is bolts, the rule of origin for bolts says a change to heading 7318 from any other heading. If the input is sheet steel, which is HS code or heading 7208, it is a different heading than 7318, which is the heading of that finished good. So the bolts would qualify. The key thing to check is whether your non-originating inputs are classified in a different chapter, heading, or subheading from your finished good, depending on what that rule of origin requires. A chapter level shift is the most demanding shift. A heading level shift is the most common. So a simplified example of a ski pole. So if our finished product is a ski pole classified under HS heading 9506, the rule of origin says a change to heading 9506 from any other heading. So a hypothetical bill of material is on the screen with 5 components. So if the aluminum shaft tube comes from China and is classified under 7608, the rubber grip comes from Mexico, is originating. We don't need to check for tariff shift. And the same for the plastic snow basket from the US and the nylon wrist strap from Canada. Those are all originating materials and get a free pass. The steel tip comes from Germany and classifies under heading 7326. Since it's non-originating, we need to make sure it shifts. Does 7326 shift to the finished good heading of 9506? Yes, it's a completely different heading. And the same goes for the Chinese aluminum shaft. The 7608 shifts to 9506. So every non-originating input changes its tariff heading during manufacturing in this example, and all the originating inputs are automatically treated as qualifying. So this finished ski pole would qualify under the rule of origin. All right, so regional value content is the second major qualification method. And the fundamental question here is, does enough of my product's value come from North America? And there are two different ways you can calculate it. The transaction value method is simpler. The formula for RVC is the transaction value minus the value of non-originating materials divided by the transaction value times 100. Transaction value is basically the sale price, and the value of non-originating material is the key component that you need to understand within that. The net cost method is a bit more involved. That formula is net cost minus the value of non-originating materials divided by net cost times 100. And the net cost is your total cost less certain excluded costs like sales, promotion, marketing, shipping, packaging, and royalties, or packing and royalties. Oops. So net cost method is generally required for automotive goods, and it's also useful for companies when there's no transaction value available, like for intercompany transfers. We'll do a quick example of transaction value. So looking at the same ski pole through the lens of regional value content, and we'll use the transaction value method. So again, regional value content equals the transaction value minus the value of non-originating materials divided by the transaction value times 100. Our ski pole sells for $45. Now we identify that the non-originating materials in here have values of $12 and $3, so $15 total. Everything else in here, including the labor, is originating. So with that, we know the numbers to plug into our formula, and I won't read it to you again, but it results in regional value content of 66.7%. For this rule of origin, we are above the threshold for 50% or greater regional value content under the transaction value method. And again, transaction value is generally the easiest calculation because it's largely based on your actual price, sales price, which you should already know. If we were to then switch gears and go to the net cost method, it's a more involved calculation. But again, it's required for things like automotive goods and is useful when you don't have transaction value. And transaction value is not allowable, for example, on intercompany transfers when you don't have an arm's length sale price. So the net cost method starts with your total production cost and then subtracts certain excluded costs. In this example, if our total production cost is $35, we subtract the shipping and packing costs of $2.50, as well as the sales, promotion, and marketing costs of $2. And that gives us a net cost of $30.50. So again, we now have the inputs needed to put into our regional value content formula for net cost. And the result is a 50.8% regional value content. So this is just barely over the line for qualification. You can choose which qualification method you want to use in many cases. Not in every case, but in many cases, you can choose whether to do net cost or transaction value. So my recommendation is if it doesn't qualify under one, try the other. All right, one more core concept that's important to understand is de minimis. And de minimis is a bit of a safety net. So if your product almost qualifies under a tariff shift rule, but a small portion of the non-originating materials don't make a required classification change, then de minimis can still save the claim. So this is listed in detail as Article 4.12, and the general rule is that non-originating materials that fail tariff shift can't exceed 10% of the transaction value of the finished good. So this is an improvement over NAFTA, where that threshold was set at 7%. And there's some exceptions for this as well that we won't dig into. But it's really important to understand de minimis is just for that tariff shift portion. It does not override RVC requirements. Again, I've included an example here of de minimis and what it would do. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through it in a ton of detail. But you can see in the example here that there is a threshold of 10%, so we can have up to 450 that does not meet tariff shift rules, and this good can still qualify. If you were to add up our costs of non-conforming values, it is $1.80. So this good could still qualify under tariff shift based on the de minimis rule. All right, so we're going to shift gears from the complicated area of how it works to the compliance side of USMCA. So once your product qualifies, once you've gone through that whole exercise, either internally or externally, you're going to need a certificate of origin to be able to claim preferential treatment. Those of you who claimed NAFTA in the past know that there was an official form for it, and USMCA does not have a specific form. Instead, what they've done in the agreement is they've listed certain minimum data elements that have to be included. So at minimum, you need the certifier's name and contact information, the importer, exporter, producer details, a description of the goods, HS classification, the origin criteria used, a blanket period if applicable, and a certification statement with a signature and date. So an important flexibility under USMCA is that the certificate can be issued by the importer, the exporter, or the producer. So that's different from many of the other trade agreements that we have. Most companies, even though there is not a required form, still use a standardized template that they've built to make sure they capture all these required elements consistently. The key is to make sure that the information on your certificate is defensible and that it matches your qualification analysis. Record keeping is probably the area where most companies fall short, and it's also the area where auditors look first. So in the US, you're required to maintain all supporting documentation for 5 years from the date of importation. So that includes your complete qualification analysis, showing how you determined the product meets those rules of origin, the costed bill of materials with supplier details and material origins, and supplier certifications or affidavits confirming the origin of all your inputs. Canada requires 6 years of record keeping, so if you're trading in both directions, please plan for the longer period. The documentation needs to be organized, accessible, and ready to produce on request. If CBP requests your records and you can't produce them within 30 days, then they can deny your claim retroactively and penalties can apply. So as a best practice, centralize your USMCA documentation in a single system, a single shared file, however you do it in your company, but make sure it's accessible, and I would audit it periodically. All right. So common mistakes that we see companies making with USMCA. Number one is the incorrect HS code classifications. This applies to both the finished good and the component materials. If your classification is wrong, your entire analysis is built on a bad foundation. So again, it's really important to get the foundation right before making a claim. The second thing we see is blind reliance on supplier statements. Just because a supplier says a material is originating, it doesn't make it so. You need to verify their claims and maintain documentation. Another supplier's statement that people rely on pretty strongly at times is their classification of the products they sell you. You are not required to use the same HS code that your supplier uses when they export something to you. You, as the importer, are responsible for ensuring you declare your import with an HS code you believe to be true and accurate. The third thing on here is applying the rules incorrectly. So misunderstanding what constitutes a tariff shift or calculating your regional value content with the wrong inputs. Then the fourth thing that can go wrong as a common mistake is not retaining your documents. So if you can't prove it, you don't have it. There's not a lot of leeway for missing documentation. So these mistakes are all preventable with proper training, good processes, and regular internal audits. So what's at stake if things go wrong? CBP has significantly increased its USMCA verification activity in 2025 and 26. They're using advanced data analytics to scan thousands of entries and flag inconsistencies. Penalties are being assessed under 19 USC section 1592, and there are 3 tiers of severity. For negligence, penalties can reach up to 2 times the loss of revenue on each entry. For gross negligence, that goes up to 4 times the loss of revenue. And then lastly, for fraud, the penalty can be up to the full domestic value of the merchandise plus potential criminal referral. Common audit triggers include inconsistent HS codes across your entries, suspicious valuation patterns or unusually high USMCA volumes, and misleading or incomplete certificates of origin. And I'd like to flag that the DOJ and DHS Trade Fraud Task Force is now actively targeting improper USMCA claims. So it's not hypothetical. Enforcement on this is real and it's ramping up, especially given the amount of tariffs that companies were avoiding in 2025 if their goods qualified for USMCA. Personal liability can extend to officers, employees, and agents, not just the corporate importer. So if you work for a company and you have concerns that they are not properly qualifying their goods for USMCA, it's in your best interest to speak up and get some support. And that's really where organizations like World Trade Center come into play, right? They can help you with any questions that you have. Their help desk can talk you through any concerns on specific questions and qualifications that you have. Or if we don't know the answer, we'll refer you to someone that does, or to someone that we think can help, whether that be legal counsel, or a third party or a contractor. All right, so we've covered a ton of ground today. Everything from the basics of USMCA through the qualification and compliance. Now I'm going to try to end it with some practical next steps with what companies can do with all of this information as soon as tomorrow. So a practical roadmap. Step 1, identify your high duty products that you import from Canada and Mexico. Focus on where the savings potential is the greatest. So we use Pareto charts all the time, right? Look at your 80-20. Where are you getting the largest impact from tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico? Step 2, once you've decided on your focus area, is to gather your costed bills of material for those products. You need to know each input, where it comes from, and what it costs. Step 3 is to review your HS classifications, both for finished goods and components. Make sure they're accurate and current. Step 4 is to run your qualification analysis by applying those product-specific rules of origin. And step 5 is to prioritize your high-impact SKUs. You don't have to qualify everything at once. Again, start where your savings is biggest. Step 6, generate your USMCA certificates of origin for any qualifying products. And step 7, share those certificates with your broker. Along with clear instructions on when and how to claim the preferential treatment. So it's not enough to just send it to your broker and trust that they have it in place. I do recommend you audit that they are applying it correctly, only to those SKUs that you've identified on your certificate and that you have backup documentation for. I think it's important to remember that with all the changes we've faced in the US in recent years, brokers are overwhelmed, right? They're working through a lot of data, a lot of information. Make sure you audit your broker. Even if they're a broker you trust, there is so much potential for error right now. You want to make sure you catch it before an external party catches it. So with that said, if you need any guidance, any training, if you need a more scalable solution for qualification or certifications, feel free to reach out to World Trade Center Denver. And Tanya, I think I made it within our time window, even with the delays. Thank you all for listening.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Again, I feel like I can spend hours and hours listening to you present. So again, let's all say thank you to Kelsey. And if you have any questions specifically about the USMCA or any other tariff-related questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, this partnership with OEDIT is an opportunity for us to help you. So, and there is a stipend available, as I mentioned, of $1,000 to help to offset the cost. You do need to fill out the request form, which will be in the chat. But with that, I see a lot of thank you to Kelsey. So thanks again. And now I'd like to turn it to Emma Howard from OEDIT. Emma, do you want to tell us a few words about the programs that you run as well?
Yes, thank you so much, Tanya and Kelsey, for the webinar today. I apologize. My computer is also having some issues, so I will not be coming off of camera, but I'm really pleased to be joining these WTC webinars and to see this continued partnership between the Office of Economic Development and International Trade and the World Trade Center Denver continue to provide really valuable resources to Colorado businesses. This program was born out of an executive order issued by Governor Polis last summer, asking OEDIT, among other state agencies, to study the impact that the ever-changing tariff ecosystem is having on our Colorado businesses. From that study, we identified what the major challenges for businesses are and instituted this program to try to address some of those challenges, save money for Colorado businesses, and ensure that our business community is mitigating risk wherever possible in relations to international trade and tariff policy. In addition to these amazing World Trade Center webinars that we have, as the World Trade Center team has mentioned, we also have subsidized packages with experts from the World Trade Center team who are available to provide Colorado businesses with one-on-one support in everything from supply chain management to tariff classification reviews to global operational audits. They are really helpful packages and will not only save your business money, but will cost your business less money thanks to the subsidization aspect of the program. In addition, on the OEDIT side, we also offer generalized business support through our small business development centers across the state. So if you're looking for more holistic support on business resiliency, regardless of what stage your business is at or what challenges your business may be going through, our small business development center advisors are always there to support. In addition, we also offer a number of access to capital programs for businesses across the state that are facing challenges accessing necessary capital to expand their business, to stay afloat, to grow, to scale, to continue mitigating impacts of the pandemic. And we have some really creative lending and credit risk opportunities for businesses. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about OEDIT programming, about the tariff navigation program, or are curious about learning more. Thank you again to World Trade Center Denver and to Kelsey. I found this webinar to be extremely practical and useful in its applicability to businesses, and looking forward to seeing how this helps our business community move forward through these unpredictable times.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Emma. And I just want to echo what you said. SBDC resources and other resources that Emma mentioned are so valuable. So if you have any challenges, make sure that you're using those resources. Get engaged and talk to us, talk to Emma. We all work together in this environment, and hoping to help you. So with that, I would love to leave you with 3 things today before we say goodbye. Number one is our next webinar is next Friday with Dave Glenn. So make sure that you register for that, and you could do so. Yeah, here we have the list. So you can do so on our website. It's also going to be in the email that we're going to send afterwards. Make sure that you register. Again, we have only 2 more left in this series. Number 2, if you need to review some of these videos, again, the recording is going to be provided in the email. You also can visit our YouTube channel. And number 3, fill out that request form. I think we have an amazing opportunity. So even if you don't know, fill it out and explain explain what kind of challenges you have with tariffs, and we'll try to find the right consultant to help you. Again, I think it's a fantastic resource that we have with this partnership. Well, I said 3, but now I just came up with 1 more. The biggest event of the year, World Trade Center Denver, is World Trade Day, which is on May 21st, which is in 3 weeks. less than 3 weeks. So I hope you all registered. Again, we typically have about 700 people attend this event. So I hope you can be there so we can all meet in person and network. And there will be a lot of discussion about the tariffs as well. With that, enjoy your Friday and see you next Friday. Thank you, everybody.